The rain hit his windshield like tiny fists. Richard Kane, dressed in a tailored suit that cost more than most people's rent, sat motionless in his black Mercedes, parked near the edge of a dim street in East London. He was lost in thought, the kind that haunted you when everything seemed perfect on the outside, but something inside was beginning to rot. Then he saw her. She was sitting on the pavement, soaked to the bone, her thin arms wrapped around her knees. Her long hair clung to her face, and her body trembled from the cold. It wasn't just the rain or the cold that made her shiver. It was something deeper. Something broken. Richard's hand hovered over the ignition. He should have driven off. That would have been the easiest thing to do. Ignore it. Pretend he didn't see. But he couldn't. Something about the girl stopped him. Froze him. He stepped out into the downpour. "Hey," he called gently, unsure of how to approach her. She didn't look up. "Are you all right?" No answer. Just more silent sobs. He crouched beside her, his designer shoes sinking into the wet pavement. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said, softer now. "Are you in danger?" That word, danger, seemed to trigger something. Her head jerked up. Her eyes were wide, red, terrified. And yet, strangely determined. "Go away," she whispered. Richard didn't move. "I'm not leaving you here." She shook her head violently. "You don't understand. You shouldn't have stopped." He stared at her, confused. "Why? What's going on?" She opened her mouth to speak, but then, a loud car horn blasted from behind them, startling both of them. A black van passed slowly down the street, headlights off. The van didn't stop. But Richard felt something in his gut twist. The girl's breathing turned erratic. "They found me," she said under her breath. "They're watching." "Who's watching?" But she didn't answer. Instead, she clutched his arm, eyes pleading. "Please, just drive. Anywhere. Just not here." He hesitated for a second too long. Another car rolled past. This time slower. It had tinted windows. The kind you can't see through. Richard wasn't one for paranoia, but this wasn't normal. Something was very wrong. "Come on," he said finally. "Let's go." He helped her into the car. She was shivering uncontrollably, her lips turning slightly blue. As soon as they were inside, she locked the doors herself. He glanced at her, hands still trembling in her lap. "I'm Richard," he said gently, watching her from the corner of his eye as he drove. "What's your name?" No answer. "I can't help you if I don't know who you are." Still nothing. They drove in silence for about 5 minutes. Then, suddenly, she whispered, "Emily." "Okay, Emily. Are you running from someone?" She looked out the window and then nodded slowly. "Is it your family?" "No," she replied quickly. "Not family. Worse." That reply chilled him more than the rain ever could. "Do you want to go to the police?" She turned sharply toward him, panic flaring in her eyes. "No. No police. Please. They're everywhere." He didn't press further. Not yet. He could see she was fragile, like glass on the verge of shattering. Pushing her might make her shut down completely. Instead, he asked, "Are you hungry?" A pause. Then a tiny nod. 15 minutes later, they pulled into the underground garage of his apartment building, a luxury tower overlooking the Thames. He wasn't even sure why he brought her here. This was the kind of thing he'd normally never do. But tonight felt different. He grabbed a dry towel and hoodie from the back seat. "Here," he offered. "Take this." She clutched them to her chest like they were gold. They rode the elevator in silence. Once inside the apartment, glass walls, minimalist decor, warm lights. She stood at the edge of the living room, unsure whether to enter. "You're safe here," he said. But she didn't move. He brought her soup and dry clothes. She sat on the edge of the couch, eating slowly, mechanically. Like her body was there, but her mind wasn't. Richard watched her closely. "You want to tell me what happened to you?" Emily placed the bowl down on the table, stared at her hands, and then whispered. "They took my sister." Those 4 words hit him hard. "Who?" he asked. She looked at him, and for the first time, he saw the full weight of her fear. "A group," she said. They find girls like us. Ones nobody looks for. They promised work. A new start. But it wasn't that. It was something else." Richard felt his throat tighten. "Are you saying human trafficking?" Emily nodded. "My sister went with them first. I was supposed to go too, but I ran. I've been hiding ever since." He sat down across from her, trying to absorb what he was hearing. "You've gone to the police?" "They don't listen. I tried once. One of the officers was working with them." Richard leaned back, disturbed. "That's a serious claim." Emily looked him dead in the eye. "I know. That's why I'm alive. I stopped trusting anyone." A long silence stretched between them. Outside, the rain continued to fall, a soft hiss behind the tension in the room. Then she said, "You shouldn't have stopped for me." Richard almost laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Well, I did. So now what?" She stood slowly. "Now you decide how far you're willing to go. Because if they know you picked me up, they'll come for you, too." Richard Kane didn't sleep that night. He paced his glass-walled apartment, staring out at the dark, rain-soaked city while the girl, Emily, slept curled up on his couch under a blanket. Every time lightning flashed, he half expected to see someone watching through the windows. He had never felt fear like this before, not in boardrooms, not in courtrooms, not even when his first company nearly went bankrupt. This was different. This was real. That girl had seen something dangerous. At 3:42 a.m., Richard made a decision. If he was involved now, if he had stepped into something criminal, he needed to know what he was dealing with. He grabbed his laptop and tiptoed into the guest bedroom to avoid waking Emily. He began with a simple search. East London missing girls. The results hit hard. Names, faces, dates. Dozens of young women who had vanished without a trace over the last 3 years. Most were labeled as runaways. Few had families pushing for answers. Then he searched again. Human trafficking, London, recent news. One article stood out. Whistleblower claims police involved in local trafficking ring, later found dead in crash. Richard read the piece 3 times. The man had been a low-level government IT employee. He had tried to expose a network operating through fake job agencies, targeting poor or homeless girls. His accidental death had occurred days after giving a confidential statement, one that was never made public. Suddenly, a soft voice behind him whispered, "That's the one." Richard jumped in his seat. Emily was standing in the doorway, pale and quiet. She was wearing his oversized hoodie, sleeves covering her hands. Her eyes locked on the screen. "You knew him?" he asked. She nodded. "He helped my sister once. Gave her a phone to contact him in case she got into trouble. She called once. I overheard it. He was kind." Richard closed the laptop slowly. "And now he's dead." Emily sat on the edge of the bed. "This whole thing is deeper than people think. It's not just gangs. It's not just criminals. It's people with power. Suits. Officials. Men in uniforms. They pretend to help, but they're part of it. She looked up at him with eyes full of something beyond fear, rage. My sister, Mia, she begged me not to follow her into that van. She was crying. They hit her when she resisted. I ran, but I never forgot her face. She knew she wouldn't come back. Richard's throat tightened. He didn't know what to say. So, he asked what he could do. Is there anything I can do to help? Emily looked at him for a long moment. There's something. But it's dangerous. I'm listening. She hesitated, then spoke, slowly. There's a file. Mia hid it. It's on a USB drive. She told me she would save everything she could, names, addresses, photos, recordings. But she gave it to someone before she was taken. Who? A boy she knew. Jamie. He lived near the shelter we used to stay at. He had a limp. Car accident. But smart. Tech stuff. Richard leaned forward. Where is he now? She shook her head. No idea. I haven't seen him in over a year. But he used to hang around the old printing warehouse near Whitechapel Road. Richard stood. Then that's where we'll start. They left just after 7 a.m. The rain had slowed, but the sky was still heavy with clouds. Richard wore a baseball cap and sunglasses. Emily stayed low in the seat, hoodie pulled tight over her head. The streets of East London looked different now. Every alley, every parked van, every shadow seemed to hide danger. They reached the warehouse. The building was old, windows shattered, graffiti everywhere. Richard parked the car 2 blocks away and walked the rest with Emily. This place feels dead, he muttered. It's never empty, she replied softly. You just can't see who's watching. They entered through a side door. The place was dark and smelled like mold and burnt rubber. Inside, broken printing machines stood like metal skeletons. And then, a noise. Someone coughing. Richard froze. Emily stepped forward carefully, peering behind a stack of crates. Then she smiled slightly. Jamie, she whispered. A thin boy, no older than 17, stood up. He had shaggy brown hair and a noticeable limp. When he saw Emily, his face lit up, but only for a second. Emily? You're alive? He asked, shocked. She nodded. Barely. I need your help. Jamie looked past her to Richard, suspicious. Who's he? A friend, she said. He's safe. Jamie rubbed his face. You shouldn't have come here. We need the drive, Emily said directly. The one Mia gave you. Jamie's face darkened. They came looking for it. Twice. I moved it. Do you still have it? He nodded. But it's not safe here. I'll go get it. He looked around and then limped toward the back of the warehouse. Richard followed him a few steps, but Emily grabbed his arm. Wait. Let him do it alone. He's scared. He knows how to stay hidden. They waited for almost 20 minutes. Then Jamie returned, holding a small, black USB stick wrapped in duct tape. This has everything, he whispered. I never opened it. I was too afraid. Richard took the drive gently. Thank you. Jamie looked at them both. Be careful. If they know you have it, they'll come. Back at Richard's apartment, he inserted the USB into a secure, offline laptop. Emily stood behind him, biting her lip. The screen loaded slowly. Folders appeared. Dozens of them. One was labeled. Proof, open last. Richard clicked through others first. Photos of vans, names of recruiters, recorded phone calls, typed reports from Mia. A spreadsheet listing over 50 girls, marked with statuses, missing. Alive. Sold. Dead. Emily gasped behind him. This is huge, Richard whispered. Then, he opened the last folder. Inside, a video file. He clicked play. The footage was grainy but clear enough. A young girl, Mia, was speaking directly into the camera. My name is Mia Sutherland. If you're seeing this, I'm probably gone. But I want the truth to come out. This isn't just street thugs. The man funding this operation is William Crowe. Richard's jaw dropped. He knew that name. Everyone in finance did. Crowe was a billionaire developer, philanthropist, and political donor. Always in the press for donating to shelters and anti-trafficking causes. Mia continued. He's been running it for years. Uses his charities as cover. Sends recruiters through them. The girls trust him. But he's the one selling them. Emily let out a noise between a sob and a scream. I knew it. I knew it was someone big. Richard's head spun. If this is true, then this drive is a death sentence. Emily turned to him. Now do you understand why I said you shouldn't have stopped for me? That night, Richard made a copy of the USB and placed it in a safe. He contacted a private investigative journalist he trusted, Claire Wilton. She was tough, smart, and fearless. She agreed to meet them the next morning. But just as they were about to sleep, Richard received a message on his phone. No number. No ID. Just one line. We know who she is. We know where you are. Return what's ours. The message on Richard's phone stared back at him like a glowing curse. We know who she is. We know where you are. Return what's ours. He turned off the screen, pulse racing. For a long moment, he stood motionless, listening to the soft hum of the apartment's air system and the quiet breathing of the girl asleep on his couch. Then he locked the phone in his bedroom drawer and walked into the living room. Emily looked peaceful, too peaceful for the storm now circling her. Richard didn't wake her. He simply sat in the armchair across from her and stayed there, watching, thinking, as the weight of what they had uncovered settled deep into his chest. William Crowe. That name kept ringing in his ears. The man was everywhere: charity galas, social welfare programs, children's education drives. A man people praised. But now, if Mia's recording was real, he wasn't just a monster, he was the one pulling all the strings. By morning, Richard hadn't slept a minute. Emily stirred at sunrise, rubbed her eyes, and looked around with a tinge of panic before locking eyes with Richard. Morning, he said softly. You didn't sleep, she asked. He shook his head. We got a message. Her expression changed instantly, calm to alarm in a second. From them? He nodded. They know you're here. They want the USB back. Emily pulled the blanket tighter around her. They always know. That's how they work. Shadows. Secrets. Bribes. Threats. Richard stood and walked to the kitchen. We need a plan. Plan for what? To go public. But safely. With protection. We can't do it alone. Emily followed him. You said you trusted someone. A journalist? Yes, he replied. Claire Wilton. She's not part of the media circus. She investigates quietly. She's helped take down corrupt politicians before. If anyone can handle this without getting us killed, it's her. Emily hesitated. What if they get to her too? Then we're already dead, Richard said plainly. By noon, Claire had arrived. Tall, in her early 40s, with sharp eyes and a tired smile. She wore a brown coat and carried a black leather satchel. This better not be a joke, Kane, she said as she walked in. Richard shook her hand. You'll see. Claire looked at Emily with instant concern. You're the girl they're after. Emily didn't speak. She just nodded. They sat at the dining table, and Richard played Mia's final recording again. Claire didn't speak until the video finished. Her hands were clenched on the table. I've heard whispers about Crow, she said. But no one ever had this. This changes everything. Emily sat stiffly. So now what? Claire leaned in. We need to verify the data. Track patterns. Confirm locations. This file is a treasure chest, but it's also dangerous. If we publish anything too early, they'll find us, and discredit the whole thing. Or worse. She turned to Richard. You'll need security. I already have it, he replied. I just upgraded the system this morning. Cameras, motion sensors. No one's coming in unnoticed. Claire nodded. Good. I'll make copies. Triple encrypted. I know someone who can analyze the metadata, see when and where everything was saved. Then she looked at Emily. You'll need to stay hidden. The moment they know you're the witness, they'll start hunting you again. I'm not hiding anymore, Emily said quietly. Claire studied her for a second. You're brave. No, Emily said. I'm tired of running. That night, Richard ordered dinner for everyone, Chinese food, comfort in chaos. Claire worked at the table with headphones on, taking notes and sending files to her contact. Emily sat in the living room, flipping through TV channels without watching. She looked like she wanted to cry but had run out of tears. Then came a knock at the door. Richard tensed. Claire paused her typing. He went to the monitor. A delivery guy. Pizza. But they hadn't ordered pizza. Richard didn't open the door. Instead, he spoke into the intercom. Wrong address. The man didn't respond. He just looked up at the camera, and smiled. Chills ran through Richard's body. I said, wrong address, he repeated. Still no answer. Then the man walked away. Calmly. Not rushed. Not angry. Richard locked every door and window. Then he turned to Claire. They know where I live. The next day, Claire brought news. My contact confirmed it. The USB metadata matches locations tied to Crow's charities. Some of the documents were created using internal systems, stuff that only someone inside would have access to. Richard frowned. So Mia really got this from deep inside. She risked everything, Claire said. And so are we now. Emily leaned forward. When do we go public? Claire hesitated. Not yet. One wrong move and Crow will claim it's fake. We need to show it to someone with power. Someone clean. Is there anyone left? Emily asked bitterly. Claire thought for a moment. There's a judge. Eleanor Marsh. She's been known to take risks. If she sees this, she might call for a formal investigation. But if she's not clean? Richard asked. Then we're screwed, Claire said honestly. That night, Richard's phone rang. An unknown number. Again. He didn't answer, but a voicemail came through. Just breathing for 5 seconds, then a whisper. She lied to you. Richard froze. He played it again. The same whisper. She lied to you. He looked toward the couch where Emily had fallen asleep again. Curled up, peaceful. Then he turned to Claire. Do you think she's telling us everything? Claire looked at him seriously. I've seen victims lie before, not because they're evil. Because they're scared. Or protecting someone. Richard listened to the message once more. Could someone be setting us up? He whispered. Claire nodded slowly. Or someone inside already has. The next morning, Richard stepped out to grab coffee from the cafe across the street. It was a mistake. He was gone no more than 15 minutes. When he returned, the door was slightly open. His stomach dropped. "Claire," he called out. No answer. "Emily?" Still silence. He rushed in. The apartment was torn apart. Papers on the floor. Chairs knocked over. The safe, empty. But what made his heart stop, Claire was on the floor, bruised, bleeding, barely conscious. He rushed to her. "Where's Emily?" he shouted. Claire groaned. "Gone, they took her." Richard's mind raced. "The USB? Gone," she whispered. Claire passed out. Richard stood up, breathing heavily. He ran to his desk. His backup copy, still there. But something else caught his eye. A piece of paper under the coffee table. He pulled it out. One word written in thick black ink. Traitor. The word traitor wouldn't leave Richard's mind. He kept staring at the paper left behind like it was alive, taunting him, whispering that he had been fooled. Emily was gone. Claire was unconscious in the hospital, with a fractured rib and a bruised face. Doctors said she was lucky to survive. Richard didn't feel lucky. He felt hunted. The girl he had pulled off the street, the girl he fed and protected, was she working with them? Or was she taken by force? The truth had shattered. Now, everything felt like a trap. That night, Richard sat alone in the apartment, lights off, laptop open. He replayed every conversation with Emily in his head. Her tears. Her fear. Her silence. Her strange knowledge of the USB's location. How did she know exactly where Mia had hidden it? Had that been a coincidence? Or had she known all along? He clicked through the CCTV footage from the day she disappeared. At 10:42 a.m., the front door opened. Claire was at the desk. Emily walked calmly to the door. She turned the knob. And then, she smiled. A man stood there. Tall. In a black hoodie. He didn't force his way in. She stepped outside. Willingly. Then he hit Claire with a pipe. Emily didn't scream. She didn't flinch. She just walked away. Richard slammed the laptop shut. It was true. She was the traitor. His heart ached. He wanted to deny it. To believe she had no choice. But that smile, it wasn't fake. It was familiar. Like she had been waiting for that moment. He picked up his phone and called Claire's assistant, Leo. "Tell me everything Claire found before she was attacked," Richard said. Leo hesitated. "Claire said to trust no one, Mr. Kane." "Did she mean me too?" Richard asked, voice shaking. There was silence. Then Leo replied, "Not you." Later that night, Leo came by the apartment with Claire's hidden file copies. She had backed up every decrypted folder from the USB into an encrypted cloud account, under a false name. Richard now had access. They opened the files together. It wasn't just names and bank accounts. It was video footage. Children being moved in the night. Inside vans. Into buildings with no signs. Security guards with guns. Each folder had dates. Locations. Names. And every few folders, one familiar name kept repeating. Emily Gray. Richard froze. He opened one of those folders. A file named Gray_witness_transfer. In the video, Emily was younger, maybe 14. Sitting in a cold room, pale, shaking. A woman was asking her questions. "Do you understand your role, Emily?" She nodded silently. If anything happens, what do you do? Emily's small voice answered. I disappear. Richard leaned back, stunned. She was part of the system, Leo whispered. Not just part of it, Richard said slowly. She was trained to vanish. A ghost child. They sat in silence. Finally, Leo said, but something changed. If she was one of them, why come to you? Why cry on a street corner? Why risk giving you the USB? Richard couldn't answer. There had to be more. He started going through the rest of the files, folder by folder. And then, something stopped him. A photo. It was faded, old. Probably from 10 years ago. But it was clear enough. A man with gray hair. William Crow. And next to him, a little girl, smiling, wearing a red dress. Emily. Richard stared at the image for a long time. Was she his daughter? Was she being protected? Or punished? The questions kept piling up. He needed answers. He needed Emily. But first, he needed Claire awake. 2 days later, Claire finally opened her eyes in the hospital. Her voice was weak, but her mind sharp as ever. Richard sat beside her. Emily, he said. She walked away. Smiled at them. Didn't fight. Claire nodded. I saw, just before I passed out. She didn't scream. She was in their system, Richard said. I found files. Videos. A training program. She was one of them. Claire looked at him carefully. Maybe once. But people change. Do they? Richard snapped. She betrayed us. Gave them the USB. Got you nearly killed. Or, Claire said calmly, she had no choice. Maybe they had something on her. Or someone. Richard looked away. He wanted to believe that. Claire continued, did you see the Crow picture? He nodded. She was with him. Maybe family. She could be his niece. Or worse, his daughter, Claire whispered. Maybe she was raised in this, to obey. And now she's trying to break out. Richard shook his head. Then why smile when she left? Claire closed her eyes for a moment. Because when you've been trained to survive in hell, you don't show fear. That night, Richard received another text. From an unknown number. A different one. Come alone. 11 p.m. You want the truth? Meet me. Attached was a photo. Emily. Sitting on a bench. Alive. Looking right into the camera. In the background was an old subway station. Abandoned. Pine Hollow Station. Closed since 1998. Richard didn't tell Claire. Didn't tell Leo. He packed a flashlight, a knife, and a body cam that streamed straight to Claire's cloud server. If anything happened, she'd know. By 10:50 p.m., he was outside the station. The streets were empty. The entrance was gated, rusted, chained shut. But someone had already broken the lock. He stepped inside. The air smelled like mold and dust. Old posters clung to the walls like forgotten ghosts. He walked down the steps, his boots echoing on cracked tile. At the bottom, he saw her. Emily. Sitting on the bench. Same red hoodie. Same haunted eyes. She stood as he approached. I thought you were dead, he said. She looked down. I almost was. You smiled when you left, he said. Like it was a game. Emily looked up sharply. It wasn't. That smile, it was goodbye. Then why give them the USB, he demanded. I didn't, she said. They think I did. Richard stared at her. What do you mean? She pulled a small chip from her pocket. This is the real one. The USB you had was a copy. A decoy. I made it look real, but I knew if I gave you the real one, they'd find us faster. Richard's mouth dropped open. So the stolen USB had half the story, she said. Just enough to distract them. Then why disappear? They said they had Mia, she whispered. Richard's heart skipped. But Mia's dead. Emily shook her head. That's what I thought. But they sent me a voice recording. Someone crying. Sounded like her. They said she was alive, and suffering. So you went with them? She nodded. If I didn't, they said they'd kill her slowly. Richard sat beside her. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't want you to get killed, she said quietly. You already risked everything for me. I had to lead them away from you. Richard looked at her, pain and relief clashing in his chest. You smiled when you left, he said again. Emily looked him in the eyes. I smiled because I finally had hope. Suddenly, footsteps echoed from the dark tunnel ahead. Richard jumped to his feet. Emily's eyes widened. We have to run. Now. They turned, sprinted down the old tracks. Dust swirled in the beam of the flashlight. Behind them, shouting. Heavy boots. A shot rang out. Then another. They ducked into a service tunnel. Richard heard a voice behind them. Bring her back alive. Kill the man. They ran faster. Eventually, they found a rusted emergency exit. Richard kicked it open, and they escaped into a back alley behind an old warehouse. They didn't stop running until they reached the street. A taxi was passing by. Richard flagged it down. Drive. Anywhere but here. They ducked into the back seat. Hearts pounding. Only when the city lights grew distant did they breathe again. The taxi sped through the empty roads, the city lights fading behind them like ghosts disappearing into the night. Richard sat still, barely blinking. Emily's breath was shaky, her hands trembling in her lap. She hadn't spoken since they got in. Every second felt heavy, like they were being watched even now. Finally, the driver looked at Richard through the mirror. Where to, sir? Richard's mind raced. Home wasn't safe. Claire's apartment was too obvious. The people chasing them were smart, well-funded, and dangerous. They had almost killed Claire. They would try again. Take us to Lakeview Motel, on Highway 9, Richard said quietly. Don't stop for anything. The driver nodded and turned the wheel. 30 minutes later, they reached a small, shabby motel. The sign flickered. One of the letters was missing. It looked like no one had stayed there in weeks. Perfect. Richard paid in cash and booked 2 rooms under fake names. Inside the room, the wallpaper peeled at the edges. The bed squeaked when Emily sat down. But it was quiet. No cameras. No city noise. Just the sound of wind outside and the hum of an old air conditioner. Richard set up his laptop and connected the small chip Emily had handed him, the real USB. He paused. Are you sure this has everything? Emily nodded. Every name, every location. Every child they ever moved. Including me. Richard swallowed hard. Were you born into this? No, she said. I was taken. When I was 4. My mom, she trusted the wrong man. And your father? Emily looked away. I never met him. The files opened. This time, the folders were different. Hidden recordings. Secret documents. Password-protected letters. Claire joined the call on Richard's laptop. She looked pale but alert. You're alive, she said, relieved. Barely, Richard replied. Claire, meet the real Emily. Emily gave a weak smile. Glad you're safe, Claire said softly. We need to move fast, Richard continued. This data, it's explosive. It names William Crowe, 5 politicians, 2 judges, and 4 foreign diplomats. There's proof of trafficking rings that go back 20 years. Claire nodded. We'll leak it. Slowly. Not all at once. We need to build pressure, not start a war. Richard agreed. But there's something else, Mia. Emily says they told her Mia is alive. Claire froze. That's not possible. I heard her voice, Emily said. I know it was her. Then she was never killed, Claire whispered. They faked it. To keep her hidden. Richard's throat tightened. Mia was more than a name to him. She was the reason he ever got involved in all this. The reason he had taken Emily off that street. The reason Claire had almost died. Where is she now? He asked. Emily looked at the screen. There's only one person who knows. The next morning, Richard drove them out of town in a rented car, heading for the state border. Emily had given them a name, Isaac Monroe. He wasn't listed in any government record. But according to the files, he used to work as Crowe's personal handler. A fixer. Someone who cleaned up messes, people, documents, locations. If Mia was hidden, Isaac had arranged it. He lived in a cabin deep in the mountains, disconnected from the world. No phone, no internet. Just a generator and a rifle. Getting to him would not be easy. But it was the only way. It took 5 hours of driving, a dirt road that felt like it led to nowhere, and 2 wrong turns before they found the cabin. It sat in the middle of the woods, surrounded by snow and silence. Smoke rose from the chimney. Richard parked the car far away and approached on foot. Emily stayed close. Are you sure he's here? Richard asked. Emily nodded. He doesn't leave. Ever. They walked slowly toward the porch. Then the front door creaked open. A shotgun pointed at their faces. Don't take another step, a voice growled. Isaac Monroe was tall, with a thick beard and eyes that had seen too much. His hands didn't shake. He wasn't afraid. He looked like a man who had killed before, and would do it again. Richard raised his hands. We're not here to hurt you. Isaac narrowed his eyes. Everyone says that. Right before they pull the trigger. Emily stepped forward. It's me. Emily Gray. Isaac blinked. You're supposed to be dead, he said. Inside the cabin, the air smelled of tobacco and old paper. Maps covered the walls. A hunting knife sat beside a loaf of bread. Isaac poured himself a drink. Why are you here? He asked. To ask about Mia, Richard said. The girl from the news. The one you helped disappear. Isaac's jaw tightened. I don't know who you're talking about. Emily stepped forward. She was my friend. She saved me when we were kids. I thought she was dead. Then they told me she's alive. I need to know where she is. Isaac didn't respond. She was the only one who was ever kind to me, Emily continued. When I was cold, she gave me her blanket. When I cried, she wiped my tears. Please, Isaac. If she's alive. I need to see her. Isaac sat in silence. Then he stood up, went to a drawer, and pulled out a worn envelope. He dropped it on the table. Read it. Richard opened it. Inside was a single page. Handwritten. Faded ink. If someone ever comes asking, tell them I'm not dead. Tell them I had to go where they couldn't follow. Tell them. I still remember the stars above the train tracks. Mia. Emily gasped. That's her. That's what we used to talk about. The stars. Isaac looked at them both. She's alive. But she's not here. Where is she? Richard asked. Isaac hesitated. Off-grid. An old shelter in the North Ridge forest. Protected. I helped fake her death. Buried an empty coffin. Changed records. I thought it was the only way to save her. You were right, Emily said. But now, Isaac added grimly, if they find out she's alive, she won't be safe anymore. They left the cabin at night, under the cover of darkness. Isaac gave them directions. A coded path. Coordinates. Richard didn't tell Claire. Not yet. The fewer people who knew, the better. By morning, they reached the edge of North Ridge. No signs. No trails. Just forest. They hiked for hours. Emily stumbled once, scraping her knee, but didn't stop. She was driven. Fueled by hope. Finally, they saw it. A cabin hidden behind thick trees and brush. Small. Faded green paint. And then, a light turned on inside. Someone was home. Richard stepped forward and knocked. No answer. He knocked again. Then the door creaked open. A girl stood there. Pale. Tired. Eyes wide. Mia? Emily whispered. The girl gasped. Dropped the lantern. Tears filled her eyes. Emily? They ran into each other's arms. Richard stepped back, giving them space. Mia was alive. Real. And the war wasn't over yet. The small cabin in North Ridge Forest was silent, except for the crackling of the fire and the soft whispers of two girls reunited after years of nightmares. Richard sat quietly in a corner, his eyes flicking from the door to the windows, alert to every sound. He couldn't believe it, Mia was alive. And not just alive, but sharp, aware, and hiding for years without help. She looked older, sure, but the fire in her eyes hadn't dimmed. Emily clung to her, crying. I thought you were dead. Mia held her tight. They wanted you to believe that. I wanted them to believe that too. Richard finally spoke. We need to leave soon. If we found you, they can too. Mia nodded. You're right. But before we go, there's something you both need to see. She walked to a floorboard in the corner and pulled it loose, revealing a dusty black binder and a small, encrypted drive. Richard raised an eyebrow. What's that? Insurance, Mia replied. Everything Crow tried to bury. Hours later, back at a new hideout Claire had arranged, Richard and Claire worked non-stop. With Mia's drive, they now had video footage, internal memos, confessions, and a full list of buyers and victims. Some of the files included secret meetings between Crow and high-level politicians. One even showed a bribed judge releasing traffickers in exchange for gold. Claire was stunned. This isn't just a scandal. This could bring down governments. But we can't release it all at once, Richard said. We need a plan. Emily agreed. If we just dump it online, they'll deny everything. They'll say it's fake. People will call us liars. Claire nodded. We'll go public, but in waves. One piece at a time. We'll protect the victims. Build the story. Make it undeniable. Mia, who had barely spoken since they left the forest, looked up. And what about Crow? You think he'll just sit back and watch? Richard's eyes narrowed. No. He'll come for us. They were right. 2 days later, a black SUV was seen circling their safe house. A man in a leather coat was spotted near the motel. Claire's phone was hacked. Richard's bank account froze. A message appeared on his laptop. "You took something that belongs to me." It was signed with a crow symbol. Claire's hands trembled as she read it. "He knows." Richard nodded grimly. "Then it's time we stop hiding." That night, Richard called a press conference. But not just any press conference. He invited 3 national newspapers, 2 international human rights lawyers, and a live YouTube audience of over 200,000 viewers. Mia and Emily's identities were hidden. Claire's face was blurred. Richard took the spotlight. Standing in front of the cameras, he said, "I used to be a man who counted money, not people. But one day I saw a girl crying on the street, and it changed everything. Behind that one child was a world so dark, so cruel, that even I couldn't believe it. But it's real. And I'm here to prove it." Then he dropped the first bombshell. A video of Crow shaking hands with an overseas buyer, discussing clean deliveries and no paperwork. The reaction was immediate. Twitter exploded. News channels switched to live coverage. Some people screamed fake. Others demanded arrests. Within hours, Crow issued a statement calling it an edited hoax. But then came the second release, a confession by one of Crow's closest men, now in hiding, confirming everything. Then the third, a judge caught laughing about disposing of missing kids. There was no turning back now. The following days were chaos. Protests broke out outside Crow's offices. The FBI announced a formal investigation. 3 politicians resigned. 1 judge disappeared. A known trafficker was found dead, a bullet in his mouth and a crow feather in his pocket. Richard, Claire, Mia, and Emily moved again, this time into government protection. The cost of speaking the truth had become dangerously high. But the fight wasn't over. Crow had gone underground. Rumors said he fled the country. Others believed he was hiding in a private estate surrounded by ex-military guards. Mia didn't care about politics or drama. She had only one question. Why did he choose us? Why did we matter? Emily answered. Because we were easy to take. Mia shook her head. Not anymore. One night, Claire came rushing into the cabin, waving her phone. Turn on the TV. They all gathered around. A reporter stood in front of a burning warehouse. Breaking news tonight, a secret trafficking facility linked to William Crow has gone up in flames. Police sources confirm at least 7 minors were found alive inside, 2 of whom were reported missing 5 years ago. And now, leaked documents suggest even more sites exist, scattered across multiple states. Tears filled Mia's eyes. I knew it wasn't just me. Richard took her hand gently. You were never just you. Then, another unexpected twist, a phone call. It came from an unlisted number. Richard answered it on speaker. A male voice spoke. Deep. Cold. You think you've won. But you've only started a war. Richard stayed calm. We're not afraid of you anymore. You should be, the voice growled. You think the world will believe children like her? Or orphans like Mia? Or a broken man like you? Richard replied, the world doesn't have to believe us. They just have to see the truth. And now they can. The call disconnected. Silence followed. Claire looked shaken. He's angry. That means we're hitting the right nerve. Over the next weeks, the campaign expanded. More survivors came forward. Emily and Mia met others like them, girls and boys once thought dead, now speaking with trembling voices on camera. Some interviews were heartbreaking. Others were shocking. But they all carried one thing, truth. Claire compiled everything into a massive exposé. It ran as a special feature on every major platform, The Untouchables, inside a hidden world of power and predators. Richard was no longer just a millionaire businessman. He was now a whistleblower, a protector, a man who had once counted dollars but now counted lives. Then came the day they had all waited for. An international arrest warrant was issued for William Crowe. Interpol agents raided one of his mansions in Spain. He wasn't there. But they found evidence, documents, passports, hard drives. For the first time in decades, Crowe was running. The hunter had become the hunted. In a small courtroom weeks later, surrounded by cameras and whispers, Emily took the stand. She looked at the judge, at the jury, and said, "I was taken when I was 4. I didn't have a voice. But I have one now. And I'm going to use it. Not just for me. But for all of us who never got to speak." She looked over at Mia in the front row. "And for her, for my sister. The one who held my hand in the dark." The courtroom was silent. Then the judge spoke. "Your bravery has opened eyes across the nation. May your words live longer than their crimes." 6 months later, Emily started a foundation to help survivors of trafficking. Mia ran a home for young girls with no family. Claire became a journalist full-time, covering cases the world had ignored. And Richard gave up his business. He moved into a small apartment, lived simply, and spent his time funding missions that rescued children from war zones and corruption. One day, he passed a street corner where a girl once sat crying. The place where everything had started. He stopped. Looked around. The bench was empty. But he smiled. Because that girl. She was no longer crying. She was leading a revolution. Final lesson. Sometimes, the smallest voice can break the loudest silence. Sometimes, one tear can open the floodgates of truth. And sometimes, helping a stranger on the street can lead you to your life's greatest purpose. Because real heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes, they carry broken pasts, and still choose to rise.